What's up? What's happening? Welcome in to Take Command, a podcast about a football team that is going to the NFC Championship game. Who would have thought? The Washington Commanders, behind rookie Jayden Daniels, are headed to their first NFC Championship game since 1991. I'm Craig Hoffman, solo tonight. I got enough energy for 1,800 people, I don't know, 70,000 people that were in Detroit. Anybody, one and all, come on in. Let's have a good time. We're live on YouTube. Some of y'all are listening to this later. I hope you're just as jacked up. More caffeine than your morning coffee if you're somehow going to bed after this game. I don't know how in the world I'm going to sleep after this because, oh my God, they did it. They did it. The Washington Commanders. Yeah, I'm going to say it again, just so everybody is very clear. The Washington Commanders are going to the NFC Championship game. They dismantle the Detroit Lions, the number one seed, the team that was probably the best in football this year. And we should give hat tip respect to Detroit. 45-31, the final score. That's a great football team that Washington just beat. And that actually makes it better. Like, I know sometimes, they're not anything, pound our chest. No. Washington just stared down the barrel of arguably the best team in football in their building on the first defensive play of the game for Detroit. I wrote down, it's loud in there. Like you could tell on television. And with a rookie quarterback who is, at this point, I think inarguably the best rookie player in the history of modern football, they stared down that barrel and said, bring it. And then they brought it. And there is so much to talk about with this game. And I think you have to just start with the fact that the two most important players in this game for Washington are two of the first three picks that Adam Peters makes in the draft last year. Think about this, of where this team is and where it's going, by the way. And I don't just mean to either Philadelphia or Los Angeles next week. The keys to this football game are Jayden freaking Daniels, who in this game was absolutely spectacular in every way. Nails in every situation. Overall, 22 of 31 for 299 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also 16 carries for 51 yards on the ground. Nails in situation after situation. Just big ball to Terry, big ball to Ertz on fourth downs. The throw to Diami is ridiculous. And as Aaron Glenn blitzed time and time again, as Tom Brady sitting there imploring him in the booth, bro, just play some zone. Die a slow death. Daniels was like, you can die however you want to, but you gonna die. And the Detroit Lions defensively just died. Because, man, this is spectacular from Jayden Daniels. And it's hard to have the words. Because when you think back to where this franchise was, forget just the football team, right? This football team was 4-13 last year. They were in shambles. Shambles. A roster that was terrible. The best thing about it was that it was so bad that it gave them immense amount of draft picks. And the previous regime was so bad at drafting that there is absolutely no one that was worth paying any money to. I mean, the guys that they're paying are guys in Allen, Payne, and McLaurin who were drafted by the last regime. I guess Cosme finally got paid. He's the one guy from the Rivera draft machine, from the Rivera draft era. But ultimately, you get a blank slate, and the way that Peters and Quinn and all of these guys just built it was remarkable. But it goes beyond that. Think back to 2 summers ago. I'm doing radio shows daily on congressional investigations. I'm having like Washington Post legal reporters on to deal with the stuff that's going around this franchise. And instead, now, it's nothing but football. Everything's on the up and up. They're winning. And think of how low those lows were and how high these highs are. And the contrast between the two is just remarkable. And it's hard to even try to gather your thoughts on this. And I think back to a story that Mitch Tischler told us on our radio show this week. because I asked him about the approach, because Mitch is around the locker room every day, and about the approach that Dan Quinn and this team and the locker room and the leaders and the coaching staff is all putting together. And there's a sign that they hung in the locker room this week. And the sign simply said, they have to go through us. That's how this team entered Detroit. It wasn't a matter of, oh, we're playing with house money. Because I think of how many times you heard that Jimmy Johnson and Gronk saying that in the halftime in the pregame show. All the other, Tom Brady and Kevin Burkhardt saying it. And I get it. And like I was saying this week as an analyst, I'm looking at this as no matter what happens this week, they've already won this season. But that's not how they should think of it. And it's not how they did think of it. The sign in the locker room said, they have to go through us. And that's kind of how Detroit's built too. And hey, the playoffs are supposed to run through Detroit. Not anymore. Not anymore. Not after Jaden Daniels is done with you. Not after Mike Sainristil is done with you. Not after Frankie Louvu. I know that should have been a flag, but oh well. Obviously, there's another big flag in this game that kind of even things out. But the attitude of guys like Chin and how they hit, it's like, no. You got to go through us. I mean, another small example from this game. The kick coverage in this game from Washington is sensational. How many times did they pin them, not just inside the 30, but inside the 20? Because they got their starters. They got Sainristil. They got Chin. They got Quan. These dudes are out there on kick coverage, flying down the field, making tackles, setting up Detroit in longer field positions. But you go back to what it was. You see where it is now, and you see where it's going. Because on top of Daniels, Sainristil tonight, the 2 interceptions are fantastic plays on the ball. The first one, he kind of baits Goff into it. And that is a risky play against that receiver. That receiver, of course, is Jameson Williams, who showed plenty of his capabilities in this game with the big long touchdown and the other things that he was able to pull off. But with Mikey on that, he's in a cover 3, so he's outside. It's 3 deep. You have a safety help in the middle. And I don't know where that safety particularly was, but it's kind of like a skinny post that Jameson Williams runs. And Mikey's responsibility is to stay high over the top, but also especially outside. And so he stays outside. He's kind of even with him. And then he's able to break back in on the ball and pick that off. That is a receiver type of play, to understand that route concept and then to break on the ball like that. And this is a guy who's been playing outside corner for never this year. He's played corner for 3 years in total. He was a wide receiver when he got to Michigan. And he goes and makes that play. And then the second one, the obviously it's a terrible decision, actually, ironically, by Jameson Williams on the trick play. And it's that call from Ben Johnson. That's not a good as you're interviewing for head coaching jobs and thinking about managing a game. I don't know that that's the one that you want on your resume. But it's clearly a throwaway situation from Jameson Williams. And instead he throws it. And Mikey makes this just absolutely sick play on the ball. And I'm just wildly impressed at his ability to continue to grow this season, of the ability of the coaches to put these guys in the right position to get prepared. I mean, another thing about this, right? This is a short week. Washington did this on 6 days rest. The Lions were on a bye. Washington played not just last Sunday and now playing on Saturday night. They played Sunday night, which is brutal because it's hard to come down after the game. And one, you're just getting to these guys played in, God, where was it even last week? It was in Tampa. You get home at, probably 4 a.m. and you're still probably buzzing from the game. Monday's a waste. Your body is trying to recover from an NFL football game. And they did what they did. Came out here prepared as all get out. Sure, they will never be able to say they stopped Jahmyr Gibbs. Okay, fine. You stopped him other ways because you were able to create turnovers. You're able to hold the ball. I mean, how about that drive after Detroit pulls it back close again to go back up double digits? The ability to sustain like that in a game that's mostly been bombs away, mostly been a track meet, to batten down the hatches and kill nearly 9 minutes of clock. I mean, that is absolutely sensational, spectacular stuff from the Washington Commanders offense, from Cliff Kingsbury, from this entire group that just continues to be excellent in terms of not just their game plans. I mean, Tress punted what, once? Again? He's punted once in the playoffs in 8 quarters? And that's kind of what they do for stretches during the season. But then to make adjustments, because, like, yes, Gibbs was a problem, but they were able to slow down Montgomery. They clearly had something on the Detroit passing game they were able to do some stuff with. And you go and you win a football game against, again, arguably the best team in football. A couple of other more pointed things from this game. Huge shout out Brian Robinson. And even, I mean, all week long, really the last couple of weeks, because he hasn't been good in a long time. I should say he hasn't been productive in a long time. He's had really, really bad looks to run into. And especially last week, like he had a couple of okay looks on some zone read gives, but those are pretty low ceiling type of plays. He got kind of what was blocked and fell forward, and good job. And then he's got a bunch of design runs later in the game that just get absolutely trashed by Tampa's defense. And today he comes out from his first carry and is just hitting gash after gash after gash. 15 carries, 77 yards, 5.1 per carry for Brian Robinson. And has the 2 touchdowns as well. I mean, just an outstanding game for him, but also hat tip to the offensive line, especially when your best player on that unit, Sam Cosmi, goes down and Trent Scott comes in. I was texting with Anthony, of course, my producer on the radio show, and he's like, who comes in? And I was like, I think it's Michael Dieter. And lo and behold, apparently Trent Scott, who's their backup swing tackle, who has played admirably at times this year, although clearly has had plenty to be desired at times as well, playing outside at right tackle when he's had to fill in for Andrew Wiley and Cornelius Lucas has been out. Apparently he's a decent enough guard that you can just keep running the ball the way they did when Sam Cosmi was in there, because a bunch of B-Rob's big gashes were off that right side. And lo and behold, look at Trent Scott go. Gashes on the right side. They also had a good job running left. And Nick Allegretti, much maligned for much of the year because he's been very up and down. Clearly they were doing something right. That big Eckler gash is off to the left. Jaden has a couple off to the left. Like, they just were able to continue to find it. And I think that's what's so impressive about this group, is there's just a resilience to them that they always will find a way. And we've talked about this a lot over the course of the season on this show, on the radio show, and many others have as well. There is a competitiveness that is the defining aspect of this team that shows up not just in how they practice and like the physicality and the attitude and what they say, but their ingenuity and how they just refuse to accept Sam Cosmi's out, I guess our running game's going to suffer. It's like, nope, next man up. We're going to find the stuff that works with these guys. It might not be the same stuff we carried into the game. We might have to do some stuff that's a little bit different, but they're able to find it. And the last thing on the running game that I'll say is something that I pointed out on Friday on the show. As you get deeper and deeper into the week, especially now because there's fewer and fewer games, the folks at Next Gen Stats are doing an unbelievable job putting out a lot of data. And one of the things that I shared on Friday was that the Commanders use pony personnel. So that's 2 halfbacks more than anyone else in the league. And they're one of the best to do it. And the Lions are actually one of the worst teams defensively against it. And in part because the Lions play more base defense than anyone else in the league. So they tend to go heavy and match personnel that way. A lot of the Commanders' big plays were out of that pony personnel. They ran it a ton in this game. So a lot of Eckler and McNichols, some of Eckler and Robinson as well. And so the Commanders were really on top of a lot of stuff that, it's not like they go through the Next Gen Stats on Friday and are like, oh, well, that's cool. Let's change our entire game plan. No, they're on that stuff from the beginning of the week. They know. And the other thing is, it's a part of who they are. That doesn't do you any good if that's not a tool that's already in your toolbox. It's in their toolbox. All they had to do was use that tool more than they typically use it. They did an excellent job of that. And the results are, well, they just scored 45 points, including 28 in the second quarter. This game was 7-3 after one. It was 7-3 after one. And then Washington won the second quarter 28-14. The other couple of things that I want to talk about here before we get done and wrap this up, and man, just try to make sense of my thoughts, and we'll give it another go on Monday. And obviously Logan will be with us on Tuesday for a tape review, and can't wait to talk about this with the big fella. But we've talked at times this year about how the stars need to play like stars in the biggest moments. And it's almost become a joke at this point when I join the pregame show with Denton and Linnell. And Linnell will be like, hey, well, in the Philly game, you said that Jaden had to have his best game to win. Like, what do you think it's going to take tonight? And, it's like, well, he's going to have to play really well. Like, he's the quarterback. That's how football works. But I think tonight, I just kind of laughed at him. I was like, dude, it's going to take probably the best game he's ever played, because the stakes for what they're going to need to do offensively are so high. And for him to play like that, he needs the help of everybody. And De'Ami Brown, again, obviously, like some of the role players, we talked about Eckler, and whether you're going to call him a role player or a star, like I'll leave that to you. But De'Ami, 6 catches, 98 yards, second straight week. He has a career day. He's certainly not a star, but man, is he playing like one so far in these playoffs. But your stars need to play like stars, and specifically in the big moments. And third downs and fourth downs, you got that. 2 fourth down conversions in the game that immediately come to mind are Terry McLaurin. Actually, 3 that come to mind. 1, Jaden Daniels on that keeper, which, bro, Terry and Arnold. Have you watched any film this year? All due respect. Fantastic rookie year. I think he's going to be a good player. I try not to be rude to pro athletes because that's just not the way I do business. But like, Jaden Daniels under center is play actioning. He's probably going right, and he's going to want the edge. Your job is to get the edge. And Jaden is so good with the ball handling, and he's so quick, and he's so sudden that it just didn't matter. So there's one. Fourth down conversion, star play like star, Jaden Daniels, bleeping star. They have another one, Zach Ertz. And literally before the snap, Brady is like, this is their guy. What happens? Fourth down conversion. Also, I think Brady did the same exact thing. That, or I'm mixing my plays because this is an instant reaction show and things are a little jumbled up in the cranium at almost midnight. But he did that on a touchdown too. It's like 3rd and goal in the red zone, and it's like do or die time. Bang, it's Ertz. And then that final fourth down that they go for, Terry, after Jaden misses him, oh my God, that's such a great play design where they run the double quick out with the slant underneath. It kind of acts as a natural pick, and Jaden just misses that slant to his left to Terry, and they come right back to Terry on the shallow cross. And by the way, speaking of red zone, stars playing like stars, not just the big down and distance situations, but Terry's savviness, I'm going to call it, to go down as he gets that tug on the hip in the red zone, that's big time, because that was probably a borderline PI, but when he goes down, it becomes definite PI. Like he had him around the hip. Like it's the correct call. But a lot of receivers, and I think maybe even a younger version of Terry, probably just tries to play through that, tries to go get the ball, and then they throw their hands up. They're like, he had me. No, Terry feels that tug around the hip. He goes down. Obvious call, puts it on the refs. Refs make the right call, and you get a new set of downs, and you score, 1 or 2 plays later. I believe that was one of the Robinson touchdowns. Generally speaking, the fourth down aggressiveness from Dan Quinn, sensational again. Managing the clock, managing the situations. There's times where you can see them going to the sideline, and Dan late is given the huddle signal like, hey, now's the time that we're actually going to slow this thing down. Just consistently going for it on fourth down, except for, frankly, that last field goal by Zane Gonzalez. I would have gone for it again. It's 4th and 1. Yes, if you make it, it's game's basically over, but if you get the first down, the game is also definitively over. Detroit out of timeouts at that point. I don't think they could have knelt it down because it was north of the 2-minute warning. So it would have taken one more first down, but you could have basically gotten the clock down to like 30 seconds. And then if you want to kick the field goal then, or turn the ball over on downs, whatever you want to do. That's your ball game. But regardless, when the game was more concretely in the balance, Quinn just relentlessly going for it. That is a huge credit to him because that is the right thing, both I think in quote unquote the analytics, but it's also the right thing for this team. This is an offensive football team. And that is something that I think is an adjustment period for Dan Quinn. He is a defensive coach that would love to just, I think, run the football and play good defense and be who they are or who he wants to be in his like dream version. But he's a defensive head coach on an offensive football team. And he has really, really mastered that because I think there's a balance for DQ to say, I know what I need for my defense to be good. And I know what we need to do to win the football game. And sometimes there's a really big crossover of those things. And one of those things distinctly is we need to possess the football. And so while going for it on fourth down like they do is an essential part of making sure the defense stays off the field and they possess the football, it also is just simply putting the game in the hands of your best player and letting him do his thing. And my God, that rookie has done his thing time and time again. And I'm just going to keep referring him to a rookie because if I don't say it, then it's easy to forget that Jaden Daniels is a rookie and he should not be doing this. This is unprecedented, but he is because he's incredibly special. And man, are we lucky that we get to watch him not just now, but hopefully for a long, long time here in DC. A couple final thoughts here to wrap up. I'll also take a peek in the comments because I'm just trying to get everything that's in my head out before I even get to everyone else's thoughts. But since we are doing this live on YouTube, we will get to some comments here in a second as well. I talked this week about how, for whatever reason, the way I was thinking about this game was like almost like the NBA draft lottery, where there's 1,000 combinations of different ping pong balls. And if this game was played 1,000 times, you mix up all the combinations, there were a lot of them that ended with Detroit winning in a blowout. Just the nature of who Detroit is, how good they are, etc. There's a lot of them that ended with Detroit winning close. There's, I think, a fair amount of them that ended with Washington winning close. And there was a select few that were very specific that ended with Washington winning in a blowout. And those combinations are exactly what happened tonight. And I laid it out. It wasn't like, hey, they just have to get lucky. No. You have to create turnovers. Not only do you have to create turnovers, you have to score on or off of those turnovers. And they did both, right? They get the Quan pick 6. Fantastic job. Not just on the pressure and the pick. That's a really good run back by Quan Martin. Like he broke some tackles on that. And then obviously Luvu, he had a meaningful block. That's how we're going to phrase that. Had a meaningful block, boys and girls. And you get the score there. They score off a couple of other ones. They take points off the board on the first Sanders still pick towards the end of the half by him picking a ball off in the end zone. So you go mega plus in the turnover column, and you get points off of them. You have to control the clock at key points, and you have to hit some big plays. Some of these high variance, big explosive plays that Washington at times has caught hot streaks on this year, they have to hit. Check down the board. They're +5 in turnovers. They score off of them. They get explosive plays, the 38-yarder to Diami. Oh, also, speaking of stars playing like stars, that run on the screen from Terry, oh my God. He sent Kirby Joseph into the dirt. It wasn't quite what Dallas Goedert did last week to whoever that was, the safety that they played last week, the Eagles. But it was close enough. And Kirby Joseph's first-team All-Pro. And Terry's just like, get off of me, bro. I got a reservation for 6. And there he goes. So they got all of those things. And it took all of those things to win, not to win, but to win like this. And this is far and away. They've played some great games this year, but it hasn't come together like this. 5 turnovers, touchdowns of all kinds, balls spreading everywhere. Just, I mean, sensational stuff. You have the stars making plays. John Bates has the 20-yard big catch late in the game because why not? I mean, just excellent stuff all around. All right, let me dive into these comments real quick, and then we're going to get up on out of here. And there's plenty of more time to talk about this as the week goes. Let's see. We got some people already wanting the Eagles. I got that. Andrew, Eagles better win. I want to stomp them out of the playoffs. I thought about that. You know, there's a lot of, you want to talk about a story arc. See if I can get my some of my inner Tom Rinaldi. Probably not at this point, but I'll work on this for Monday's show. There's a lot of poetic justice in this season. I don't mean poetic justice. There's a lot of poetry. A lot of poetry in this season. The redemption of week 1 against Tampa, where you open, you're not quite ready yet. Jaden just doesn't know what he doesn't know. And then you unleash this incredible learning curve that takes him from a really dangerous weapon to, oh, this guy's playing quarterback, to, by week 3, this guy's playing big boy quarterback, to, he has no drop off. And by the middle of the season, this guy's playing like a top 10 quarterback, to, by the end of the season, there still hasn't really been a drop off, except for a small window where, in hindsight, yeah, his ribs were definitely bothering him. And he's going to finish top 5 in MVP voting. And then he gets Tampa again. And he beats him. Kalijah Cansey with the towel. Oh, I can't believe this guy. Yeah, he ran away from you. But now he can do all the other stuff. And so there's poetry there. But also think of where this all started for Jaden and Mikey and everyone else who got drafted. To summon my inner Chris Berman, I know, because I was there. Jaden Daniels' first moment as a Washington Commander, that big megawatt smile we saw when he walked off the field, when he came out for the kneel down, the rare show of emotion as opposed to just looking at Charlie being like, when and where are my interviews? He was drafted in Detroit. Full circle. Tonight. And there's really one more loop to close. If you think of the open loops of this season. And actually, I guess there would be 2 more. There's 2 more really big ones to close. And they're both potentially ahead. The first would be if Philly beats LA tomorrow. Because he did play probably the best game of his season. I mean, tonight's one of them. But probably the best game is that Philly game in some ways. Certainly his most explosive. He's got 5 touchdown passes. Statistically, it's sensational. And he played at an extraordinarily high level in very, very tough circumstances. But the Philly game that they win after they knock out Jalen Hurts. And so the Eagles can always say, like, well, we were up 21, was it 21-0, 21-7 before Jalen went out, and like we were going to curb stomp you. And the only reason you stopped Saquon is because you didn't have to focus on Jalen anymore. They match up again in the NFC Championship game. They can avenge the first loss in Philly, and they can settle the score. It's 1-1. Let's go. Rubber match. Game 3. It's on. And I guess the other one was one of his worst games, but like one of his toughest challenges. Like the first time he was like, whoa, mega major killer NFL defense. And that was Baltimore. And if Baltimore can win tomorrow against Buffalo and beat Kansas City in the AFC title game, which would be a revenge loop closed for them, then you get another rematch. Commanders have beat every single team they played multiple times this season. They beat the Giants twice. They lost to Philadelphia. They came back and beat them. They lost to Dallas. They came back and beat them. They lost to Tampa, came back and beat them. Now they potentially have time to do that again to Philly. And then they do that again against Baltimore, and they would be Super Bowl champions. And that would be cool. I think our post-game show would be a little bit different on that one. Although this one's pretty fun. This one's pretty fun. Let's see. What else? I guess the Beltway series, if people are saying that, yeah, that would be. I actually had a group text. A couple of my buddies. Actually, I'll shout out one of the people in it. Well, I'll shout out both the people in it because that would be unfair. It's three of us. And one of them is my good friend Kevin Brown, who many of you who are Orioles fans know because he's the voice that you hear during Orioles games. And so Kevin, who I know from college, went to Syracuse together, and our friend Alex, we were in a group text, and Kevin goes, Beltway Super Bowl, anybody? So that would obviously be tremendously fun. But to not get too far ahead of ourselves on the AFC side of it, quick early thoughts on Philly and on LA. I think the formula has to be the same against both, which is your offense is going to have to do what it's been doing, which is fine because that's who this team is. I can't sit here and be like, Dan Quinn gets credit for being an offensive football team and then be like, oh, no, the offense is going to have to win the football game. The offense is going to have to win the football game because they're an offensive football team. Against the Rams, it's because the Rams can possess the football. They can really run it. I mean, there's the running game of the Rams does scare me quite a bit, but I also think that because Kyren Williams is a high success rate back, he's not super explosive. Eventually, you got to score in the red zone. And I do think Washington could hold them to some field goals. I do think you can turn Stafford over. And if he has a couple good games in a row and it's all of a sudden maybe he's due for one, you could do that against LA. And that would be an interesting one too, because, obviously for very serious and non-fun reasons, that game might not even be in LA. It could be, but the chances are they probably need all their first responders still working on the fires and doing all the things in the aftermath of that. So there's a good chance that game's actually in Arizona as well. Talk about full circle for one, they played there already this year, and two, the cliff of it all. Jaden Daniels, Arizona State. So there's a lot of full circle stuff there as well. But I think that one would be interesting if you could protect Jaden in that game, because the Rams pass rush is obviously nasty. That's big time. But I also don't know that they're the most disciplined team on that stuff. So it's one thing when you're getting after Sam Darnold, as Detroit found out tonight. It's one thing when you're getting after Sam Darnold. It's another trying to chase after Jaden Daniels. On the Eagles side of it, you're going to have to hit big shots. Like, that is a team that is built to keep everything in front. And what the Commanders did last time was they're just like, fine. Like, you're going to take up the short stuff. We're going to run by you. And Jaden's going to put a ton of air under the ball. And our guys are going to go run underneath it. And that's that. And 5 touchdown passes later, the Commanders had come back and beaten the Philadelphia Eagles. So would the Eagles make adjustments? For sure. Would it be a lot harder defensively to do what they're doing or to keep it up when Jalen Hurts is back out there? Yeah. But obviously they figured some stuff out against Saquon in the second half. Could they carry that over? And then, obviously there's just tremendous familiarity amongst the personnel. I'm sure Marshawn Lattimore wants another shot at A.J. Brown. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff in that game. And it's rare. Very, very rare. I actually don't know how often it is in NFL history. If we wind up having to look this up tomorrow, we will. That teams have played each other 3 times in a season. So fairly unprecedented. But I'll just close with this. I trust these players. I trust this staff. I trust this organization. And to bring it all the way back, think about that. Think about that statement. I trust these players. I've had that at times. There have been some good players that have come through here in the past 30 years, but not nearly enough, and certainly not at the quarterback position. I trust this staff. What was the last non-Joe Gibbs coaching staff you trusted? Most people watching this were not alive when that happened, because the last staff that you trusted before this one was Joe Gibbs 2.0, and the last staff you trusted before that one was probably Joe Gibbs 1.0. I know Norv had some okay years, and maybe Marty, who didn't really have a fair shot here. But, man, this staff in total, from Joe, Dan, Cliff, I mean, what Larry Izzo's doing with the special teams unit, on down the list. Spectacular. And you trust this organization. You trust that Adam Peters is going to make sure that they have the pieces that they need. You trust that Josh Harris is going to whatever, hey, we need to buy this thing to help the players recover. We need to do this thing to help our advanced scouting. We need to do whatever. Josh Harris will be there. It's a heck of a spot to be as an organization. And we all still hope, like the one thing that hasn't changed with all the success is we hope this is still the start of something. But this can be like, there's no limit. There's no ceiling on what this start has to be. Just because it's the start doesn't mean that it can't go all the way. And, man, what a night this is. What a night this is. 45-31, the final score. All right. That's it. That's all for this edition of Take Command. Hopefully some of that made sense. It's just an emotional high. I mean, I've been covering this team for basically 10 years now. And never, ever, ever has there been a feeling like this. But the cool thing is I've been fortunate enough to cover championship teams in other sports. And it has felt like this. Just leave that as your prevailing thought. I'm Craig Hoffman. I'll see y'all on Monday on the radio for the Hoffman Show at 4 o'clock. Logan and I will be back for a film breakdown on Tuesday. In the meantime, Doc Walker is live on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. I believe that show is also streaming live here on YouTube as well, if you'd like to click on over there. And for those listening on the podcast later, thank you for listening. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time on Take Command.